My name is Jesse Abeda. I am a technology advisor here at Technology Source. Today, we will be covering the topic of cybersecurity and how this affects the work from home workforce. At this time, it is an honor to introduce our host for today. It's Sonya Moline. Sonya is a dynamic leader with extensive business continuity planning experience. She holds a deep passion for sharing the tools for success with others and can be found volunteering in her local community, as well as participating in a mentoring program for a national nonprofit, Alliance of Channel Women. Sonya also founded the annual Techie Toy Drive, which collects and donates STEM toys directly to children in need. Previously, Sonya was a chief executive for a business cloud services firm, Effortless Office, and was a founder and partner in a compliance firm, ComplyPro. She joined Technology Source with a passion for business process improvement. Her IT career started when she was an IT director for several mid-sized healthcare companies, including Physicians Data Trust and Center for Sight. While at these firms, she implemented extensive pandemic planning measures. These included virtualizing infrastructure and eliminating physical hardware, such as servers and computers, to enable both on-site staff and remote workforce. All of that experience is very relevant to what we are facing today. Without further ado, Sonya, take it away.
Thank you so much, Jesse. And thank you to all the advisors for being here today, and our customers and everyone. We couldn't do this without you, and we're doing this for you. So it's a way for us all to stay connected. So good morning to everyone waking up across the world today. We've all found ourselves, many of us, in the same situation where we're social distancing or quarantined. However, technology is giving us opportunities like this to come together and to stay connected. It also helps that employees who are now working from home are able to stay connected and have that transition to work remotely. This is going to maybe never go back to the same way that it was, but we will see a huge acceleration in innovation, and that's exciting. Tech and cybersecurity projects, even super important ones, I know I was an IT director, they often stall, they often get pushed to the back burner. This is because of scarce budget constraints or simply just there's too many other things to deal with. But right now what we're seeing is a little different. On the age of the coronavirus, there's a lot of initiatives that are getting pushed to the forefront, and they're gaining traction. And so this is causing a huge period of economic and technology transition. And even, like I said, if things go back to the way they were, which they probably won't, this marks a point in time where there are distinct opportunities to take more aggressive types of cyber attacks, and that is causing a lot of damage for organizations around the globe. This is things that are also changing these attacks. A lot of times they used to be just skimming money, but right now they're looking at potentially damaging or completely crippling businesses as these cyber attacks grow. So this is a critical time for us to implement cybersecurity hygiene and strengthen our security, because we're now relying on our technical infrastructure more than ever before to keep us connected. So if before you put that on the back burner because you could always do it in a different way, nowadays, with the way things are going, the backbone needs to be protected. The foundation of many businesses right now is a technical foundation. So who are we? We are Technology Source. We have over 3,500 customers around over 60 different countries in the world. We have over 200 different service providers. You can see a few of them here today. And we have over 200 advisors and partners that work with us mostly around the United States, but as well as other countries. So that's who we are at Technology Source. We recently rebranded and used to be called Telecom Brokers, but we've been around for, like I said, 20 plus years. As you can see at Technology Source, we have a lot of different elements of business success, and these include things like business optimization, software applications, connectivity, voice. At Technology Source, we provide some really great events for our advisors to stay connected and for our customers to learn and grow and hear directly from the many providers that we work with. As you can see, a lot of these were canceled, but in April, we've held a lot of different events focusing on things like healthcare, thriving in a digital world, and then, of course, today, that work from home environment and how that's affecting cybersecurity. On May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, we have the new normal, which we'll be talking about with 8x8 and CenturyLink. And then we'll be talking about some of the other events too as we get further along and understand, what rules are in place. We also have a Central and East Coast virtual Techie Happy Hour coming up. This is an online event, and this is specifically for our advisors and partners. So if you are around about 4 o'clock on Thursday Central Time and you'd like to join us, just reach out to Stu or Ann or myself. Anyone on the team can get you that link, and we'd love to have you. I'd also like to introduce today our security product specialist at Masergy, Mr. Rich Korn. Do you want to just say good morning, Rich, and say hi to everybody?
Good morning and hi, everybody. That about cover that?
Perfect. Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Rich, for being here today. I'm really excited to have you. I would like to just talk about some of the state that we are in, and then also talk about some of the things that we're seeing in the marketplace. Most of us are working from home. We're relying on business collaboration tools. We've got a quick internet speed. 2 times weaponized attacks have doubled in the past 30 days, and every 14 seconds, victims are falling to ransomware, and 84% of workers are on multiple teams. Consumer complaints are doubling. 14,000% of emails have been used that are phony about the virus. So people are using the virus to create weaponized attacks. Palo Alto logged over 100,000 phony websites, and so people are logging in thinking that they're checking on the status of their checks that they're getting, or they're thinking that they're logging in, learning about the coronavirus, or maybe looking at statistics for the coronavirus. There's over 81,000 coronavirus-related malicious files, and we have over 199,000 coronavirus spam emails. And 80% of attacks are reporting phishing, and that's one of the things we'll talk about today. So the other thing I want to talk about, and this is a hashtag that we use a lot at Technology Source after the coronavirus hit, is we want to really plan for the recovery. So everything that we're doing is revolving around planning for that recovery. There's not a knee-jerk reaction like, hey, let's do this right now to get over this. It's, okay, yes, we need to move quickly. However, there needs to also be a consideration on how is this going to impact us 3 months, 6 months, a year down the road. And so all the solutions that we implement, we will also consider those types of effects. So how do these attacks happen? I just wanted to talk really quick about a few things that I've seen. This is one that was near and dear to my heart because I was trying to help this organization. This is the UC Medical Center, the Keck Medicine. And so this is sort of what happened. This is all public knowledge. You can go online and find out about this. Organizations are finding themselves in the headlines of a lot of different newspaper articles and online articles because they've been attacked. And it is a requirement, especially if you're in the healthcare industry, to report these types of attacks to the media if the breach happens and there's over a certain number of people affected. And that is, I think it's 500 the last time I checked. So the way that works is the attacker sent an email, and that piece of email got through the spam filter. Then it made it to the employee's inbox, and then the antivirus, while it was sitting on the inbox, failed to discover it. Then the user opened the attachment in a Word document, and then the user enabled and ran a batch file Windows script, which was downloading a binary file. They did this unknowingly, obviously. They didn't click on something that says, download batch script for binary file. Then their web filter and antivirus failed. Then the user ran the ransomware. I don't know the name of the ransomware, but we'll just call it Wild Willy, right? And there's always a name, and then it runs. And then the encryption negotiation took place, and then the web filter failed again. The data encryption then deleted all the shadow copies of the data for this organization, and then a ransomware note was displayed on that user's screen. And then the way they found out that this happened was everybody came in that morning and there was a ransomware note displayed on everyone's screen. This was a very sad situation that happened, but it is a constant, ever-present concern for organizations. So we always want to plan for these types of attacks. I'm going to show you this, and I'm going to tell you this with a caveat that this is irrelevant. Had I shown you the top 10 malware in 2000 or 2001, there may have been some relevance to that. But really, when you look at the top 10 malware that happened in 2019, it's sort of irrelevant because this only accounts for 0.0001% of the malware. That is because the malware is so diverse and it is being spread and manufactured on the internet by people And so you have these large, well-known pieces of malware, but they only account for such a small percentage that even if you just protected against these top 10, you wouldn't even be covering 1% of the malware that's out there. That's a horrible statistic. So don't look at this and say, oh, we have to protect against WannaCry. Well, obviously, but you need to be protecting against all of the other malware that's out there too. So here's a piece of malware that's kind of scary. It just came out. This is called the coronavirus, and this is what you're seeing if you get this piece of malware. It pops up on your screen. It says, hello. If you see this message, it's because your computer's been affected by the coronavirus. Please don't waste your time, blah, 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 blah. And they're not lying. If you click remove virus, it does nothing. It's grayed out. If you click help, it does nothing. If you reboot your computer, you see this gray screen of death. And so that's what you get. So these are some scary things that are out there that consumers are downloading right now, and they're consuming these viruses because they're launched out wild into the waves right now, and people are taking advantage of that type of situation. There is also the compliance reality. So not only do we have to worry about the cybersecurity reality, we have to worry about getting fined from all of these wonderful organizations that are trying to protect us. But if we do have any type of breach, we can get fined depending on how well and robust our security measures were, how well our physical, technical, and administrative safeguards were. And those are all set by the DOJ. No matter what type of consumer you are, you have to be in control of compliance depending on what type of data you're storing. For healthcare, it's a completely different reality. They have all of those organizations, and then multiply that by all of the state, federal, and then all the health plans as well. So I feel like it's a fish in a fishbowl, right? You're being looked at by all the hackers. You're being looked at by all these people trying to get your data. You've got the health plans, you've got CMS, you've got the OIG, GSA. I mean, there's just so many organizations out there. Not that these organizations are trying to hack you, but they are out there checking on you and making sure you're doing things right. I'm hugely passionate about cybersecurity as well as compliance. They're very different. So let's talk about some of the projects right now that are getting a green light. And these are the projects we're seeing get pushed through quickly, and they need to be getting looked at. So the first one is cloud migration. If you haven't migrated to the cloud, it is time. I know there's been a lot of concern, but this is that time where I think it's that final straw that you're gonna need to take a look at those. There is a lot of cloud-based applications out there that you're likely already using: Azure, Active Directory, Office 365, even maybe an Office VPN, but your staff maybe haven't had the ability to use them remotely. This is going to create new challenges, and we're going to want to work with vendors and providers out there who can address those. We're going to also want to check to make sure that your Authenter applications are in place and that you have two-factor authentication, if not more factors, multi-factor authentication, in place for any of your cloud products. The next thing that is getting the green light right now is recruitment. We're hearing a lot about the only jobs available right now are in food service and other types of essential services. Well, IT is one of those essential services, and that's because, for very good reason, it's the backbone, right, of many businesses like we talked about. So other than grocery stores and food service and those types of things, organizations are rushing right now to look for ways to prevent the security challenges raised by working through this pandemic. And this is one of the things I wanted to point out, is that new team members that you may have hoped to recruit might not be available because they're already being taken at working with other organizations. And so it's important to look for possibly security as a service or cloud security managed products, as well as possibly augmented staff. And those are all things that we have at Technology Source. The next thing is identity management. And so this project is getting the green light because users need to be verified, right? They need to have their identity access management. They need to have their, like we talked about earlier, multi-factor authentication, privileged access security if they're administrators, and these are all becoming essential. And so this needs to be set up for every organization. I like to use the minimum necessary policy. This is something that is very important through HIPAA. You only have the right amount of data access to do your job. So that means if I shouldn't be able to see one patient's information because I have no reason to see that, then I shouldn't be able to see that. Just like in accounting, you don't want to be able to just have your entire staff see all your accounting records. So we need to make sure that their identity is managed and it's very carefully managed. The next thing is cost cutting, right? Efficiency, cost cutting. course, organizations right now, we're facing potential budget constraints and maybe layoffs and things like that. And so for the first time, many organizations are supporting what's going on in seeing security professionals support the rollout of things like remote access, remote setup, password distribution, desktop as a service, unified communications, authentication projects, VPNs, BYODs. A lot of these things are cost-setting measures, and it's interesting because you see a price tag associated with them, but then you also have to look at the return on investment or the total cost of ownership of these tools and services, and then you might find that there's actually cost savings there. And in my opinion, you should find that there's cost savings there. I mean, you want to move forward, not backwards. And so a lot of the projects that we are working on right now are to identify where can we cut corners, where can we cut costs without sacrificing security. And then network support. So this is something, obviously, we need to talk about the tricky challenge of patch management and network support. This got even more difficult, right? So you used to have to patch things that were in the office. Now you're having to patch things that are moving around in different places or going home with the users. The virus really has obliterated any justification that you had in the past for not patching or not managing your cybersecurity properly. And so these are the types of things that we're finding are really, really moving forward right now. Just a couple more things, cybersecurity awareness. Obviously, we need to be training our staff, and that's getting the green light right now more than ever. And then hygiene programs, right? We see, washing our hands is really important. Well, we also need to know what is in place for the users and pump dollars into those programs, just like you would pump dollars into buying your soap, right? We need to pump dollars right now into these hygiene programs to make sure that users are aware that while they're working remotely, that the importance is undeniable that they need to be taking action. Threat monitoring, we're seeing cybersecurity ramping up as the cyber criminals are also ramping up. And so we need to be even more vigilant around the threat monitoring and unauthorized access, as well as any behavioral analysis, heuristic detection, signature-based detection. All of these types of detections need to be in place. We need to have monitoring in place, and then also alerting in place, and then also plans in place to deal with these threats. And then last is IoT security, right? We have coffee shops and restaurants closed, so do we still need to worry about IoT security? Yeah, we do, right? Because people are now working from their home-based internet. They're working from their home routers. We need to ensure that they have basic cybersecurity hygiene principles in place, router password change, home assessment of IoT devices. Considering all these devices may have access now to corporate or organizational data. Those are just a few of the projects that we're seeing around cybersecurity right now, really moving quickly. And so I just wanted to bring those to the table. And then now I wanted to introduce Rich. And where are you joining us today from?
We actually just moved right before this whole thing hit from Chicago to Eagle, Colorado. So I'm up in ski country. My wife
Nice.
used to race downhill, and we moved just in time to get the house situated and have the ski hills closed. So I've been up here for the winter and haven't been able to ski yet.
I know,
Welcome to life.
I live like 40 minutes from Tahoe, and same thing, we just moved here and we're like, let's go skiing, and then nope, all the slopes are closed. So no, totally got it.
Exactly.
Great. So tell us, Rich, what are some of the things that Masergy is working on right now for your customers in the face of what's going on with everything? Tell us about current customers, new customers. Just give us a little bit of information on what you guys are doing.
You've hit on a few of them already. When people are working from home, when they're going to the cloud, they've got data everywhere. In order to be secure, you have to have visibility everywhere. What we're finding is a lot of customers have come through and they stood up this very, very quick VPN solution, gave client licenses to employees, and they're sitting at home using personal laptops and personal computers to access the corporate environment every day. Well, what they don't know is what that employee is doing at 2 o'clock in the morning. What gaming site are the kids going to during the day that they're on a shared home network? And we've actually found is that a lot of customers now are having challenges because they've created this trusted backdoor back into the corporate environment from home, and the employees have no idea they have a compromise at home. It's a trusted credential, and now the corporate environment's in trouble. So I think you hit it where you made the comment, you kind of alluded to it, where when security and the data was all on-prem, it was a lot easier. Use the analogy of castle wall and the moat and the armed guards, but now when that data goes out for a walk, how do you keep track of it? How do you keep it safe? And that's really the challenge that we're seeing right now, people working from home. So from a Masergy-based perspective, I've been there for about 2.5 years. Before that, about 20 years in the industry. Masergy really has 3 different product sets, and I'm going to kind of talk about 2 of the 3 in today's conversation are really related to security. So we do have a UC-based platform for unified communication as a service and contact center as a service. We have our managed security service, which can be sold as a standalone offering, and it can be combined as part of our hybrid networking environment, which is our 3rd option. So most people hear about Masergy, they think of us on the networking side, not so much the security side, but what we're finding is as those 2 areas are beginning to evolve, they're evolving into one another, and they're really becoming tied at the hip. Around all 3 of those different product categories, we are an engineering and an innovation company. So it really comes down to customizing solutions for the customer. If you ask me for spreadsheet-based pricing for a network, for example, there's a reason you changed your name from telecom broker. Same kind of a concept. It really has become more of a solution sell and a consultative sell. And when it comes down now to understand what the customer's business drivers, what are their goals from a business perspective? Is it cost savings? Is it efficiency? Usually it's going to be both. And there's ways you can do that with the right solution being put in place. Being an innovation company, we are very, very much into analytics and giving service control to the customer. We're a very, very transparent company. So in most of what we're going to talk about, customer will actually have control of the environment and they're going to have full visibility into that environment. So in order to understand security, let me start off by talking a little bit about the network. We have a single ASN backbone. It was custom designed for real-time performance of applications, high definition voice and video. The backbone in the security space is still very, very important because of what you talked about, Sonya. The data is all over the place. It's in the cloud, it's in colos, it's on-prem. You've got remote workers sitting at home. All that different data still has interdependencies. You might have a remote worker at home who's accessing a cloud-based application that might be connected to an AS400 sitting in a colo somewhere, and that might be pulling information from a finance server that's still sitting on-prem for security reasons. You now have those 4 different areas with interdependencies, so the backbone is still important from a performance perspective, but more importantly, it's important from a security perspective. You're going to hear me say a lot that security is all about visibility, which means I have to have visibility into everywhere the data is and into the transit. You're going to hear a lot of times the phrase SASE nowadays. It's a marketing term created by Gartner and a couple of different cloud-based providers. If you talk to Zayas and a number of other industry analysts, it's actually limiting. And it's limiting because it doesn't incorporate 2 things that I think are critical. Number 1 is visibility into that data in transit. Public internet doesn't have that level of visibility, so you don't know what's going on in transit. Our 100% software-defined backbone does have that level of visibility. The second component is they're really going against a zero trust model, or based on a zero trust model. We already talked about those individual users coming in via VPN from home with trusted credentials. If you look at what the SANS Institute stated, 76% of the most damaging breaches are the result of individuals with trusted credentials, either malicious insiders or the accidental negligent-based insiders. You put that Trojan ransomware diagram, that person clicked on something they shouldn't have clicked on. They clicked on a Word document that may have come from a source they shouldn't have trusted, but they had trusted credentials, which means that a zero trust-based model might not have caught that, depending upon how it was set up. So that's why, in our philosophy, you have to have the ability to keep the bad guys out, but then you have to also plan for recovery, to use your phrase. You have to recognize when the bad guys get in as quickly as possible so you can kick them out and reduce that damage, and maybe 2 or 3 machines have that message instead of every machine. So to that end, we've been incorporating security as part of our wide area network. We chose to use Fortinet firewalls as our edge device. Now we can add in things like UTM-based functionality for additional security controls on what's going across that Fortinet. So things like email antivirus, gateway antivirus, things like URL filtering, some DLP. That's not going to replace the existing security investments that a customer has already made for antivirus. It now adds defense in depth. If I go back to my castle analogy, you start adding additional castle walls on the inside of the castle. Now the bad guys have to get through multiple layers. I mentioned we have a 100% software-defined backbone core. That is very, very important when it comes down to shadow IT discovery. Our backbone is software defined, meaning it's application aware. When we combine that with the Fortinet-based firewalls, I have the ability to tell customers every application running across their backbone. If you start looking at the information coming out from McAfee and from Gartner Group and whatnot, most companies think they're running about 30 applications. And this is especially true with the advent of cloud applications. Most companies are actually using closer to 2,000 that the IT staff is not aware of. When we talk about awareness, use that phrase, and I love that phrase, this becomes critical. You can't stop what you can't see. You can't solve for what you don't know is even a problem. They're estimating shadow IT to be responsible for 1/3 of all successful data breaches. Not compromises. Compromise means the bad guys get in. Data breach means they got out with data. They got out with information. So we have the ability to go ahead and provide a list of all those different applications and then give a Fortinet-based risk score so that now the customer can make that determination of, yep, we know this application, it's allowed. This application is not known to us, but it's got a risk score of 1, we'll go ahead and we'll allow it. And now they know to monitor it. This one here has a risk score of 5. We don't want TikTok running our environment. I'm going to block that application from all of my sites. Okay. Now, you also mentioned identity WAN-based analytics, identity access management being tied in. This is a newer component that we've just come out with this month, which allows for things like Active Directory integration. So now instead of going ahead and saying, hey, here's the IP address that's causing the problem, I can automatically match that IP address with an individual user. As we have people working from home, working from Starbucks, airports, going to different offices, you don't know where they're working from anymore. You don't know what device they're working from anymore. This is becoming critical because it used to be, I would give you an IP address, and then the IT staff would have to go figure out, okay, who had this particular IP address assigned to them from the DHCP server at 2:30 in the afternoon yesterday. That takes a lot of time from a research perspective. Now I can come by and say, this was Sonya. She was doing this at this point in time on TikTok, which is an unauthorized application via shadow IT, and now Sonya gets into trouble, but more importantly, that risk is automatically closed. That issue is resolved before it became a problem. That's that level of visibility that comes in from having a 100% software-defined backbone, okay? Now, this is also far talking about things that do require our private software-defined network. We're going to start getting into is security in general. So when we start talking about security in general, we're under attack all the time. All right? Our customers are being under attack from state actors, from cyber criminals, who, by the way, to them, COVID-19 is confusion. Confusion means it's opportunity. These are bad people who don't care about ethics. If they did, they wouldn't be doing that. And then you've got juvenile delinquents. Whether this is, a 12-year-old sitting at home in mom's basement or a 42-year-old sitting at home in mom's basement. They're doing this because it's fun. And this is what the industry gives our customers to combat that with. One of the questions I love to ask customers is how many people do you have in IT and how many of them are dedicated to security? There are 3.5 million unfilled security positions estimated in the world today, which means most customers do not have the help that they need in the security space. Yet the security space is getting more and more complex. It used to be firewalls and antivirus, that was security. Well, not anymore. Now you have all these different categories, and if you have one security person, it is impossible for them to understand all the different categories, all the different product sets, install them, configure them, patch them properly. Most importantly, understand what all that data you're getting from all these different components means collectively. That really has become the challenge in the industry. I like to reference the Cybersecurity Framework, and I'm going to hit on this at a very, very high level. I break this into 3 different categories. Things that you do before a compromise, that's identify and protect. Things you do during a compromise, detect and respond. And then things you do after a compromise, recovery. Okay? Historically speaking, so when we talk about the Cybersecurity Framework, identify is simply understanding what your risk is. Protect is all the hardware and software that's designed to keep the bad guys out. All of your antivirus, all of your different signature-based environments, your zero trust-based environments. That protect stage we cover in our Fortinet-based firewalls and associated UTM. that protect stage is going to fail. Not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And it's going to fail for four main reasons. Number one, I mentioned 3.5 million unfilled security positions in the United States. Reason number two, sophistication level of the attacks continue to increase. They're getting harder and harder to recognize, especially when we're not doing the employee awareness that we need to be doing. Reason number three, asymmetrical warfare. These bad guys are spending $5 on the dark web, they're getting tanks, we're spending millions in R&D, we're getting BB guns. And reason number four is the most important reason, customers have employees. I jokingly say, if they have employees, you've got stupid and you can't fix stupid. It's not stupid, it's just as simple that they don't understand that threat landscape. It's gotten to be way too complex, and someone is going to make a mistake and click on that PDF from the person that they know sends invoice copies. But in this case, that person had been compromised, and this is actually a phishing attack, and they clicked on the invoice. That's the reason that Gardner Group, Forrester, all tech publications have been saying detect and respond is critical to security. They've been saying this for years. You have to recognize when the bad guys get in as quickly as possible so you can mitigate the issue, because time becomes the enemy. How many machines can they infect every 5 minutes, every 10, every 15 minutes? If you can catch them right away, you can kick them out. Now you have to re-image 5 machines instead of re-imaging your entire environment. If you have a service that gives you a threat report once a week, great. You went home at night, they sent you the report on Monday, and you've been compromised for the entire weekend and didn't know it. Doesn't do you any good. If you only have 1 or 2 people in security, you need to have 6 dedicated to monitoring your environment. 3 shifts per day plus vacation coverage. That assumes they can keep up, assumes the customers can keep the employees. Most people don't have that. But if they go home and they're sleeping and that's when the attack comes, which is daytime for China as an example, and Romania, it's too late by the time they get in the office. It's spread too far. Then you have the recover stage. Recover stage is one area that we do not get into, but Sonya and her team, they're going to have people that within their portfolio that can. Things that will do incident response-based retainers. That's the advantage of working with a trusted partner, with an advisor, is they can combine different partners to create a holistic solution for the customer. When we start talking about our managed security service, this now can be sold with our network or as a standalone. This is where we have 2 different levels, if you will. We have a product called Threat Monitoring and Response, which is the first time our SOC gets involved, but they're only looking at the logs on the Fortinet firewalls in the associated UTM, and then they have the visibility in the network. Our managed security service goes much more in depth, where now I can start ingesting all of the data from all the customers' existing security investments. And I want to have visibility into everywhere there is data, right? The network, the cloud, endpoints, especially endpoints today. I have to have all that visibility. I'm going to bring all that visibility in, take all that data from all these different data points that I am not going to go through individually. That would take way too long. Then we run that through a behavioral analytics tool. So now you understand the behavioral component that Sonya was mentioning. All that visibility comes into play with the behavioral analytics tool. So now I can give the customer what we're going to call actionable intelligence. So we're going to take all the technology, we're going to combine that with our SOC for the people component, if you will, and then we're going to customize response procedures based on the customer's environment. We want to be able to tell you, here's what happened, here's how it happened, here's all the supporting documentation, here's the risk to your environment, here's what we did to mitigate the issue if possible, blocking an IP address at a firewall or quarantining a machine, and then most importantly, here are the detailed steps for the customer to take to resolve the issue. As an example, let's say it's a patch, but they have a vulnerability on a server in the cloud. I'm going to give them the link for the patch, but I don't want to have the file level access because that's not compliant, that's not secure. I want to have the security component, so I don't want to have the keys to the castle, but I'll give the customer, or if they're working with another partner that's doing the recovery stage, I can give the information to them on the detailed steps to take to resolve the issue. So security really has to be that protect stage along with the monitoring-based component. And then all that technology combined with people, processes, that comes into that compliance component. It all has to be working together holistically. If you have any gap in any one of those, you're leaving an open door for the bad guys to get in. I covered a ton of material in a very, very short period of time. I can go about 3.5 to 4 hours in front of CIOs with this kind of technology of an environment. So
good stuff. I did have some questions from the audience, and audience chime in if you have any more. One of the questions, and this is actually from an advisor, they say, so how do we know what the right solution is? This advisor, is working with us, and they're a newer advisor, and so they're on today for kind of a training. But they want to know, how do we know what the right solution is for the right customer, and how does Masergy help us with that?
Great question. The answer to that is very, very long-winded, but I'll try to make it as succinct as possible for right now. The real answer to that is it's going to vary from every individual customer. Every customer's risk is going to be different, their environment's different, their product mix is going to be different, their expertise in-house is going to be different. Where they have their data is going to be different. So what it really comes down to is having that conversation with the customer to understand what their risk is, what their needs actually are. And that's going to tie into making sure you're talking to the correct contacts. Quite often, most of the VAR world, as an example, is usually talking to IT people. They're not the ones making these kinds of decisions. When you start mixing and matching these kinds of products, it's executive leadership you want to get into. You don't want to be talking to risk compliance either. Quite often, unfortunately, they're looking to check a box, and they're usually fighting for resources with IT security. So if you can get those two groups to the table to discuss the same thing and get on the same page, and then get the executive leadership, that's where that conversation needs to happen. Because otherwise it's looked at as an expense, and to Sonia's point earlier, operational efficiency. I prefer to use the term Security Operations Center as a service, because really what I want to try and do for that IT team is take all of that research off the customer's plate so they can focus on the resolution instead of trying to figure out what the problems even are. And it really becomes that operational efficiency or that cost savings conversation on something that on the outside to an individual component looks like an expense.
That's great. And then we have a question specifically more around the actual product that you were mentioning. One of the questions is, can shadow IT scans work for work from home employees?
Great question. And it depends on how this setup is being done. So in our environment, we're using the Fortinet firewalls at the edge. So we've got customers, and Ross and Lisa are on, they might get to this a little bit at the end. We actually created a specific VPN-based product for our customers. In the normal-based environment, if a customer has our SD-WAN network, they can create an SSL tunnel, if you will, from a laptop right into our cloud backbone. As long as they're doing that, then they have that level of visibility. Now, I'm a big proponent of defense in depth. So working from home, especially if they're accessing SaaS applications, Office 365, Dropbox, Salesforce, etc., we can add CASB into our solution. According to Gartner Group, we're the only MDR company in the world doing that today. And now CASB, even if someone's using a personal laptop and bypassing the corporate VPN, which I admittedly consistently forget to log into my company's VPN, but if I have CASB base running, I have my username, my password, I have my two-factor authentication via my Google Authenticator. They have no visibility into that. What CASB does is allows for additional security checks and visibility into those SaaS applications, including some DLP-based functionality and shadow IT discovery. So defense in depth again. Great question.
Great question from the audience. Jesse, did you want to take that one?
Protect and detect as both software solutions. What is the differentiation?
Great question. So when we talk about protect, that's hardware, software designed to keep the bad guys out. Typically, it's going to be signature-based. If I go back and use the Trojan example that was used, antivirus didn't recognize it. Malware didn't recognize it. URL component didn't recognize it. It was a new attack. They didn't have the signatures for a known threat. So that's part of why I say it's going to fail. Where the protect stage comes into play is all that signature component. Now, detect and respond, I use those combined. Reason for that is because you have to be able to act on what you actually see. There are products that can do the detect stage. StealthWatch from Cisco, for example. There's a behavioral analytics component in Splunk as a SIM. Here's the problem. If you're using software from that detect stage or a product, when it finds something, it creates an alert. If you don't have someone monitoring that SIM and monitoring those logs 24/7, it doesn't do you any good. I refer to a SIM as a junk drawer in the kitchen. Target was compliant. They had the logs. And that cost is still increasing today because they didn't monitor their logs 24/7. So that's why I believe it has to be a combination of that technology, but then it also has to be the people doing that 24/7 monitoring and then customizing those response procedures, which can vary based on what the issue happens to be. So it really ends up being a combination in the detect and respond stage as opposed to a signature-based in the protect stage.
Right, and in the case with Target, it was interesting because the threat came in through their air conditioning unit, and the IT staff saw the blip. They saw it happening, but they thought, oh no, that's just the air conditioning. That doesn't affect us, right? And so I think we've all since lost our jobs and probably moved on. And the funny thing about cybersecurity, and I've learned this from meeting and supporting a lot of CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers, is that if you are a CISO, it's one of the only jobs that I know of where if you live through a disaster, a threat that takes your entire company down, and even if you failed miserably, you're in higher demand as a CISO than another CISO, because then you have had to respond and go through all of that and learn all of that, kind of hardened up a little bit in the face of those threats. And so there's CISOs now that were the CISO at Target or, Equifax or at other organizations that are higher paid now and have, a better reputation. They've written books and it's one of the strangest, most interesting industries.
Ironically, I am working with the former Target CISO right now and they're a customer. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. They have that experience, and as long as they can articulate what they learned and apply what they learned from that experience, they're actually in more demand.
Yes, absolutely. We have another question about Masergy. What are some of the other products and services outside of cybersecurity that you offer? And I think this is a customer that's looking to maybe find a vendor that offers multiple solutions rather than go with, I know there's a lot of vendors out there and it's good to layer, but sometimes, you do introduce more risk.
They want one back to pack.
One back to pack. Hey, that's my phrase. I love it. Awesome.
There you go.
All right, go ahead.
So the answer to that is we really have the three different components. We've got our UC environment, so Unified Communication as a Service, which is based on Cisco's platform. It was based on BroadSoft, which Cisco bought. So we are one of 8 global preferred partners for Cisco. We also have the contact center as a service with Cisco. We are the largest contact center as a service partner that Cisco has. As part of the COVID-19 response, we do have a UC-based environment that we can spin up very, very quickly for customers in response with a short-term agreement on that. We have the same thing on the VPN side of things. It's a little 3-month agreement. We can get customers spin up in about 24 to 48 hours to have secure VPN as opposed to something that's not very secure. So you've got your voice side with the UC and contact center. We have our wide area network, which is a 100% software-defined private backbone. In our environment, I want to specify for our SD-WAN as an example, it is not Fortinet's SD-WAN. We just chose to use their appliances, but we're bringing all that traffic back to our backbone for that level of visibility and control and performance. So we don't have an over-the-top internet component. We can do that as a one-off if we need to. And then the third piece is that managed security service. So all three of those can be sold as a standalone. Quite frankly, if you're using our backbone-based component, you might as well be using our UC because it's already on the same backbone, and you might as well be adding the managed security service. But all three of those can be sold as standalone options, and there just are some benefits to put them together.
Well, that's great.
The only thing I would say is just keep in mind when you're talking about security, you have to keep the bad guys out, and then you have to have the ability to recognize when they get in, and that requires visibility everywhere there's data and everywhere the data is transiting.
That's good. That's good advice. Well, thank you. I'll close us out here. At Technology Source, we offer 3 simple steps to sourcing as a service. That's what we are. We're the sourcing as a service company. Everyone's aware of SaaS, DaaS, infrastructure as a service, security as a service. Well, we're your sourcing as a service company. So the way this works is you have a strategic conversation with us, and we'll talk about the data that you're trying to protect, the goals that you have, and then you'll get expert recommendations from businesses and warm introductions to the service providers that you'd like to meet that we recommend. Then the next step is to purchase directly from these service providers for the right solutions for your business, and then hopefully start all over again. If you're happy with us and you like the process, we can continue to work with you and grow and support you and help our customers win. So that's our sourcing as a service process. Again, a little bit about us: over 3,500 customers around 60 different countries, and over 200 service providers and 200 technology advisors. We've been around for about 20 years. We used to be telecom brokers, but now we're technology source. I'll close this out with that. Cybersecurity initiatives are rising to the forefront right now. Companies must proceed with caution. The key takeaway from today is that implementing large-scale changes in these uncertain times may be difficult, but foundational projects like cybersecurity are happening right now. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Join us every Tuesday from now till May at 10 a.m. Pacific Time for the Technology Source Virtual Roundtable Series.